The project started almost exactly 5 years ago with what I thought was a very simple question, which was why do movies always have to be the same? They start here, they end here, shows, features, all the kind of same format. And when you start to think about that, it's really kind of a fascinating question. And you have to look back to the beginning of cinema, like 130 something years ago, when it was moving pictures on celluloid film, and that had to be reproduced. You had to be able to like have a master copy and make other copies to send out to the cinemas. Well, generations now have kind of grown up with and accepted that fact that, oh, a movie starts here, ends here. It's always the same. And now that we've gone to digital, there is no reason that that has to exist, but we're just so used to it. Like we're used to like turning it on. It's going to be exactly the same every time we see it. But there's so many other possibilities. So with all the technology that we have, I was just dreaming of a way that I could make a film that changed. The story is the same, but it changes every time that you watch it. And I thought that was an interesting idea and an experiment to try. And 5 years later, here we are with Eno. Brian has used generative software and technology in his music making for decades now. He's been a pioneer of using technology in his art. And so it kind of made sense to use an approach that was not a standard approach. So he was I mean, it was the reason that he did the film, because he's turned down many people approaching him to try to do like a career spanning documentary. But he hates the, biodoc, the standard, music star biodoc. But this was an interesting idea. And when I had the original concept 5 years ago, I talked to a friend of mine, Brendan Dawes, who's a digital artist and programmer based in England. And he thought we could probably, do this, make this movie that could be kind of constructed in software and be different every time it plays. So we made really just a basic kind of demo of the architecture and showed it to Brian in the summer of 2019. And he just loved the idea. He was like, this is exactly what I want to do. So we started the project there and got a little bit interrupted by the pandemic and not being able to travel to England as much. But we started digitizing and restoring Brian's archive, which was like 500 hours of material, and then doing new filming with him and conversations. It took a lot of work and a lot of just sort of trial and error, playing with the idea of scenes that could maybe show up in the film, but maybe not show up in the film. And how do you craft a story when you're not really sure what the order of the sequence is going to be? One thing that we have in our favor is it's all about Brian. It's about one person. And if you learn about Brian's work with David Bowie and at the 20th minute or the 40th minute or the 50th minute, it kind of doesn't really matter. A lot of my films don't have a kind of rigid chronological structure. And I like movies that you learn different things about the subject, but you as the viewer kind of make the connections. No one's making those connections for you. I always think that's a lot more rewarding as a viewer. Like our brains love to figure out puzzles, and they love to kind of like make those connections. So the order of the film and the scenes that are in the film can kind of change from movie to movie, but it starts the same and it ends with the same scene. Everything in between can change, and it's a different kind of filmmaking, but it's also a different kind of film watching. As a viewer, you kind of have to kind of be open to. The next time you see the film, it's going to be different. You might see the David Byrne scene this time. You might have to watch it 5 times to see the David Byrne scene. And there are just like billions of different combinations that could possibly exist of this movie. And every time you watch it, you'll never see that version again. So I don't know, it's an interesting experiment and, a kind of a perfect idea to throw out here at Sundance, just to kind of get feedback from other filmmakers and audiences of like, okay, well, this is an idea. Like we can change the way that the form of film works. And, let's talk about the possibilities. Each scene needs to kind of do a job. They're almost like little short films in some ways. And, we sort of divided up a lot of the footage into, types of scenes. You can have kind of creative strategy tools that Brian's developed. You could have a biographical scene. You could have an archival scene. You could have a music performance. So there's a little bit of a rhythm that you can establish just by kind of like, you don't want to have three big ideas in a row or three creative strategy tools in a row or something. So we sort of came up with a language, working with our editors, to sort of have these scenes kind of do a job wherever they appear and establish a little bit of a rhythm of that. So it's not like we're just throwing a bunch of footage into something and letting some software kind of figure it out. There's more editing involved in this project than any project I've ever been involved with, because on one hand, we're editing way more footage than you'd normally need for a 90-minute movie. And we're going in and it's like I said, there's like 500 hours of archival footage that Brian has. So we're formatting the things and preparing those for the system as well. And then it's just a trial and error. We would watch an output from the software system and be like, that's kind of a little weird. Like, maybe we need to have transitions here. So it's just been several years of developing and playing with it to get to this point. I'm surprised how prolific he is, and even now at 75, how he's in the studio 8 hours a day making music. That is all he wants to do. He does not want to be talking to documentary filmmakers about his past or anything. So he's just like making records and scoring Netflix series and doing all kinds of stuff still, and visual art. And if you look back at his career, it's just mind blowing the stuff that he's done. So, it was the sheer volume of it. What surprises me is I've spent 5 years just kind of looking at his life and his work. There's still stuff that comes up like that I see, like I'll find something on YouTube and I'm like, whoa, what the hell was this? Like I'm still discovering things about this person. So, on one hand, we had 50 years of material and his lectures and interviews and performances. So you can see how his thinking and how his creativity has evolved over the time. And we can have 1970s Brian having a conversation with 2000s Brian and 1980s Brian. It's almost this like we're mapping the inside of his brain or something in the film. And the way the film works is kind of a little bit more like how our memory actually works. We don't remember the same story the same way every time. And sometimes in different parts of our lives, we remember things differently. So that's all somehow reflected in the structure of the film. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the exciting part of it because there's a million different things we can do. The film could be different every day. The film can be different for different cities. The ultimate goal is that every person who streams the film gets their own unique version that no one else in the world will see. Doing a new film every day is easy. We just make a lot of files because every time I click generate, a 90-minute film comes out that's different than any other version. So we can do a lot of different things. And part of, premiering it here and talking to people and talking to the streamers is trying to find out like, well, what are the possibilities? Like, is this an interesting thing for audiences to watch a film that's different every time? It's how do you review a film that's different every time? I mean, all these questions are coming out of the project, which is really incredible. That's why we made it and why we brought it here to Sundance. My films have always been about the creative process, either design or art or architecture. So for me, as much as I'm a huge fan of Brian's music and the stuff he's done with Bowie and Talking Heads and U2 and all these bands, but it's about the creativity. Like that's what I take from it. Like the way he thinks about creativity, the way he thinks about art. Those are the things that I think people, will be inspired by and hopefully like help them in their creative lives.